Most countries have the same problem. Not enough houses, rising prices, skyrocketing rents, and millions of people wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a home. But one country is facing the exact opposite problem. A problem so strange, it almost sounds impossible. Right now, there are millions of empty homes sitting across this country. Not because they're too expensive, not because investors bought them, not because they're being renovated. They're empty because nobody wants them. Think about that for a second. While much of the world is desperately trying to build more housing, this country already has too much. Entire neighborhoods are filling with abandoned homes. Villages are slowly emptying out. And every year, the problem gets worse. In some areas, you can buy a house for less than the cost of a used car. Others are practically being given away. And yet, even at those prices, buyers are hard to find. So how does a developed country end up with millions of unwanted homes? What's causing entire communities to disappear? And if houses are so cheap, why isn't everybody moving there? The answer reveals one of the biggest demographic shifts happening anywhere in the world today. A shift that's changing cities, towns, economies, and the future of an entire nation. Because this isn't really a story about houses. The houses are just the evidence. The real story is what's happening to the people. For decades, this country was growing. Its population expanded, its economy boomed. New homes were built everywhere. Developers assumed demand would continue forever. But then something changed. People stopped having children. Young workers started leaving smaller towns. The population began getting older. And slowly, almost unnoticed at first, entire communities started shrinking. Today, there are streets lined with empty homes, schools with fewer students every year, businesses struggling to stay open, and local governments desperately searching for ways to reverse the trend. Some experts believe this could become one of the defining challenges of the 21st century, because if it can happen here, it can happen elsewhere too. So how did one of the world's most advanced countries end up with too many houses? How bad has the problem become? And what happens when there simply aren't enough people left to fill them? Let's find out. To understand how this happened, we need to go to Japan. Because Japan isn't just dealing with a few empty homes, it's dealing with millions of them. Across the country, abandoned houses have become so common that they even have their own name, Akiya, which simply means vacant home. But the scale of the problem is anything but simple. Today, there are millions of empty properties scattered across Japan, from small villages hidden in the mountains to suburbs just outside major cities. And every year, that number continues to grow. At first glance, it doesn't make much sense. Japan is still one of the largest economies on Earth. It's safe, clean, modern, and home to some of the world's most famous cities. So why are so many homes being abandoned? The answer starts with where people want to live. Over the last few decades, younger generations have increasingly moved toward major cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya. That's where the jobs are. That's where the opportunities are. And that's where many people see their future. As a result, smaller towns and rural communities have been left behind. The people who remain are often older, and when they eventually pass away, many homes are left with no one willing to move in, no one willing to maintain them, and sometimes, no one even willing to inherit them. Slowly, houses begin to deteriorate. Gardens become overgrown. Roofs start leaking. Walls begin to crack. And another property joins Japan's growing collection of empty homes. In some regions, local governments became so concerned that they started creating special databases listing vacant properties. The goal was simple: connect potential buyers with homes nobody wanted. Some properties were listed at incredibly low prices. Others were sold for a fraction of what similar homes would cost elsewhere in the world. And a few became famous online because they were almost being given away. But despite the attention, the problem continued growing. Because cheap housing wasn't solving the underlying issue. People weren't avoiding these homes because they were expensive. They were avoiding them because of where they were. Many of these communities were shrinking. Jobs were disappearing, services were becoming limited, and younger residents continued moving toward larger cities, which created a vicious cycle. The more people left, the less attractive these places became. And the less attractive they became, the more people left. Before long, entire regions found themselves trapped, surrounded by homes that nobody wanted, and facing a future that looked increasingly uncertain. But here's what's truly fascinating. Japan's housing problem isn't really about housing at all. Because the empty homes are only a symptom. The real problem is something much bigger. Something that governments around the world are watching very closely. And if current trends continue, Japan may simply be the first country to experience it on this scale. The surprising thing is that Japan's empty housing crisis isn't really about houses. It's about people, or more specifically, the lack of them. Because while millions of homes sit empty across the country, Japan is facing another problem at the exact same time. Its population is shrinking, and it has been shrinking for years. For decades, Japan's population grew steadily. More people meant more workers, more families, more demand for homes, more growth. Everything functioned as expected. But then the trend reversed. People started having fewer children, the population began aging, and eventually, the number of deaths each year started exceeding the number of births. At first, the effects were subtle, easy to ignore, but over time, they became impossible to miss. Schools began closing, businesses struggled to find workers, entire communities started getting older, and the demand for housing slowly weakened. Today, Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world, and that creates challenges far beyond the housing market, because a shrinking population changes everything. Think about it. Who pays taxes? Who fills jobs? Who supports local businesses? Who keeps towns alive? When there are fewer young people entering the workforce, economic growth becomes harder. Companies struggle to hire, governments face increasing costs, and rural communities often feel the impact first. That's why so many experts are paying attention to what is happening in Japan. Not because Japan is unique, but because other countries are beginning to see similar trends. South Korea has some of the lowest birth rates in the world. Parts of Europe are facing population challenges of their own. And many developed nations are starting to ask difficult questions about what the future might look like. Could more towns become empty? Could more homes become unwanted? Could the problems Japan is experiencing today become common elsewhere tomorrow? Nobody knows exactly how the future will unfold, but one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The housing crisis that dominates headlines in many countries isn't the only housing story worth paying attention to. Because on the other side of the world, an entirely different crisis is unfolding. Not a shortage of homes, a shortage of people. And that's what makes Japan's situation so fascinating. While much of the world is asking how to build enough houses, Japan is quietly confronting a question few countries ever expected to face. What happens when there are already too many? The answer is still being written, but if current trends continue, Japan may offer the world a glimpse into a future that many countries aren't prepared for. And those millions of empty homes may be one of the earliest warning signs.